The courtroom in Norfolk, Virginia fell silent the moment Judge Richard Coleman leaned forward, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Take that off, B*TCH. The words echoed off the polished wooden walls, slicing through the dignity of the young nurse standing before him. Every head turned. Every breath paused. And in that single humiliating moment, Hannah Brooks felt years of sacrifice, service, and silent courage crumble at her feet. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in standing up for those who cannot stand up for themselves, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us why compassion still matters. Hannah hadn't expected her Tuesday to end in a courtroom. She had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift at Norfolk General Hospital, her scrubs still faintly smelling of antiseptic and exhaustion. Her navy jacket, the one with the small embroidered patch on the shoulder, was part of her routine. It bore a simple insignia and 2 words stitched beneath it, Mercy 6. To most people, it meant nothing. To her, it meant everything. The trouble began when she parked in a reserved space outside the courthouse while rushing to deliver critical medical records requested under emergency review. The space had been marked for government personnel only, and though she had clearance through a federal medical partnership program, the security officer on duty didn't recognize her credentials. A misunderstanding escalated into a citation. Hannah, drained and emotionally raw from losing a patient earlier that day, tried to explain. But exhaustion has a way of making even the strongest voices tremble. Judge Coleman was known for his strict courtroom demeanor. He believed respect was earned through authority, not compassion. When Hannah appeared before him, still in her scrubs and jacket, he didn't see a frontline trauma nurse who had saved dozens of lives. He saw a tired young woman who, in his eyes, dared to challenge protocol. When he ordered her to remove her jacket, claiming it was inappropriate attire, she hesitated. Not out of defiance, but because that patch represented something sacred. Mercy 6 wasn't just a nickname. It was her call sign during joint military medical evacuation missions overseas. Hannah had volunteered with a civilian surgical unit embedded with Navy SEAL operations in high-risk zones. She had crawled through smoke-filled compounds to stabilize wounded soldiers. She had held pressure on shattered limbs while helicopters thundered overhead. She had earned that patch with sweat, blood, and unshakable courage. But none of that mattered in that moment. The insult hit harder than the order. Gasps rippled through the courtroom, but no one spoke. Hannah's cheeks burned, yet she slowly removed the jacket, folding it carefully in her hands. Her eyes remained steady, though inside she felt the sting of public humiliation. Years of discipline kept her posture straight. Years of service kept her silent. Unbeknownst to Judge Coleman, seated in the back row that morning was Admiral Thomas Hale. He had arrived quietly to observe proceedings related to a veterans advocacy case. Tall, silver-haired, and bearing the quiet gravity of decades in uniform, he rarely drew attention to himself. But when he saw the folded jacket in Hannah's hands and caught a glimpse of the Mercy 6 patch, something shifted in his expression. That call sign was not ordinary. Mercy 6 had been the designated medical lead during Operation Iron Harbor, a classified rescue mission that had gone terribly wrong 3 years earlier. Admiral Hale remembered the night vividly. A SEAL team pinned down, communications failing, casualties mounting. Extraction seemed impossible until a civilian trauma nurse volunteered to deploy with the Quick Reaction Force. She had insisted, knowing the risks. She had stabilized Lieutenant Jacob Mercer under direct fire, keeping him alive long enough to reach surgical care. That nurse's call sign had been Mercy 6. Admiral Hale rose slowly from his seat. The courtroom murmured as the decorated officer approached the bench. Judge Coleman's irritation flickered into confusion. Hannah stood frozen, unaware of what was unfolding behind her. The Admiral requested permission to address the court. His voice was calm but carried unmistakable authority. He spoke of service, of sacrifice, and of individuals who operated in shadows so others could sleep peacefully at night. He described a mission where courage had not worn combat boots but hospital scrubs. He described a young nurse who refused evacuation until every wounded operator was stabilized. He described Mercy 6. Hannah's heart pounded. The room felt smaller. She realized what he was doing, and tears threatened to blur her vision. Admiral Hale then revealed that the nurse standing before the court had been formally commended by the Department of Defense for valor under fire. Her clearance to access federal facilities, including emergency government zones, was not accidental. It was earned through acts most people in that courtroom could scarcely imagine. Silence swallowed the space. Judge Coleman's face drained of color. The authority he wielded so confidently moments earlier now felt fragile. The words he had spoken hung heavy in the air, impossible to retract. Hannah didn't look triumphant. She didn't look angry. She looked tired. Tired of having to prove her worth. Tired of being underestimated because compassion is often mistaken for weakness. Admiral Hale turned to her, his eyes filled with respect. He didn't need to say much. The acknowledgement itself restored what had been stripped away minutes earlier. The citation was dismissed immediately. But something far more significant had occurred. The courtroom had witnessed the power of unseen service. They had seen how quickly judgment can blind us to truth. Outside the courthouse, reporters began gathering, having caught wind of the Admiral's presence. Hannah slipped away quietly, jacket back on her shoulders. She had no desire for headlines. She had a night shift waiting for her. As she walked back to her car, the weight in her chest felt different. The humiliation still lingered, but it was softened by validation. She remembered the faces of soldiers she had treated, the families who had hugged her in hospital corridors, the lives saved because she chose to run toward danger instead of away from it. In the days that followed, Judge Coleman issued a formal public apology. Not because public pressure demanded it, but because he realized that authority without humility is hollow. He began attending veteran support events, listening more than speaking. The experience changed him. Hannah continued her work at Norfolk General. She never boasted about her commendation. Most of her colleagues only knew her as the nurse who stayed late, who brought homemade cookies for exhausted residents, who whispered reassurances to frightened patients at 3 a.m. But sometimes, when a helicopter passed overhead and the distant rumble stirred old memories, she would touch the Mercy 6 patch and remember who she was. Strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it stands quietly in a courtroom, enduring insult with dignity until truth rises on its own. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like, share, and comment below. Your engagement helps spread stories of courage and compassion further than you realize. And before we close, I have a special request for you. Comment the word respect if you believe no act of service should ever be dismissed or humiliated. Hannah's story reminds us that we never truly know the battles someone has fought before they step into our line of sight. A uniform, a jacket, a simple patch can carry stories of bravery beyond imagination. In a world quick to judge and slow to understand, may we choose kindness first. May we look twice before we speak. And may we remember that sometimes, the quietest person in the room has faced the loudest storms. Because on that ordinary Tuesday in Virginia, a nurse walked into a courtroom unseen. And she walked out remembered.